Okay, so considering that today is the first day of Hanukkah, 25th of the month of Kislev, last night we lit one candle. So just a little bit about Hanukkah. So the way we're going to do this is by comparing Hanukkah candles to other candles that we have in Yiddishkeit. So we'll make 3 different candles. You have the menorah in the temple. You have the Shabbos candles. And you have the menorah candles. Now, as is true with all Torah observance and all Jewish holidays, they each have their unique component. And what makes them unique, makes them special in that regard, which is why especially when you learn Chassidus, whenever you arrive at a holiday, and you study about the holiday, you're left with the sense that this is the highest holiday. And then you get to the next holiday, this is the highest holiday. You get to the next holiday, because it's true. Every holiday has its unique character, its unique message. And in that regard, it is the highest holiday because it uniquely expresses that message more than any other holiday. And then so on and so forth as you go through all of them. So when I do a comparison between Hanukkah, the temple candles, and the Shabbos candles, this is not an absolute, as if Hanukkah is greater than the other 2. It's just to highlight the uniqueness of the Hanukkah candles so we know the message we're taking away. So let's begin with the Hanukkah candles versus the menorah in the temple. 3 major differences we find. Number 1, the menorah in the temple, lit daily, is 7 candles. The menorah reaches to number 8. The temple candles, although in theory, they could be lit. There's all discussion exactly if you can move the menorah and you can light them. Rambam rules you can and how far out you can go. But ordinarily, the menorah is lit indoors. Notwithstanding the fact that our sages tell us that the windows of the menorah of the temple were narrow on the inside and getting wider outward, as opposed to most windows back in the day, which were narrow outside and wide inside to bring the light in. The menorah, the windows in the temple were narrow inward and wide outwards, that light spreads to the world outside. But nonetheless, the menorah was lit in the temple proper, deep into the temple, farther deep, even more deep than the altar, which was most of the sacrifices. Whereas the menorah we light specifically outdoors, right? In the primary way of doing a mitzvah, you would literally do it outside. If you go to Jerusalem until today, it's beautiful. You walk around, you see the menorahs outside, like literally on the streets, attached to the homes. And difference number 3 is, right? So difference number 1 is 7 versus 8, indoors versus outdoors, and then day versus night. The menorah in the temple is lit specifically during the day, even during the day specifically, whereas the menorah that we light has to specifically be lit at night. And if one lights it during the day, it has to be lit at a certain point after, which is why we did it like yesterday afternoon after 3:30. So you can light at a certain point in the afternoon, but it has to be able to continue to burn into the night. So what these 3 things tell you, the 2 of them are obvious, right? Indoor versus outdoors, night versus day, is that the menorah is about transforming the street, transforming the outside, lighting up the streets, transforming the darkness, really engaging in a place of darkness and negativity, and transforming the light there. The temple is a perfect place of holiness. So the menorah in the temple is just the transmission of holiness. True, it spreads the holiness outside, but the holiness emerges from a place of goodness and holiness, and from there it emerges into the outside, like through those windows. So it's lit during the day, it keeps on burning at night, and it shares, lights up the night. That's true, but the holiness comes from a place of goodness, whereas the temple, the menorah candles, the holiness itself, light itself, comes from a place of darkness, comes from a place of negativity, right? It's the big difference between the inspiration one derives from watching a tzaddik. You watch a tzaddik, you hear a tzaddik speak. In his world, the world is perfect, the world is godly, the world is holy, and you just You can't believe that people live in the same world as me, but they live on like this different, they live in a different world where everything's just perfect and holy. And, that's one kind of inspiration. That's a temple kind of inspiration. That's an inspiration that comes from what Hasidus would term from above to below, right? Where, there's a world of holiness and it's just being exposed to you. That's a light that emerges from the day, and emerges from the inside of the temple. The light of the menorah, by contrast, is listening, getting inspired from someone who's struggling. The person does not live in a perfect world. His world is not holy and pure. He lives in the same kind of world you do, where he's fighting every day with his animal soul. And what he shares with you is some sort of really challenging struggle he's going through, and how he won an inch. An inch he won. He controlled himself for 20 minutes and he got it. It's a different kind of inspiration. Inspiration that comes from below to above. It's an inspiration that comes from the place of darkness. That's the menorah. It's on the outside, it's at night.
Another question. I was talking a few weeks ago on the Torah, when God gave the Torah. It was on Shabbos, and there was fire on the mountain, and there was lightning, and there was the blowing of the shofar. All things were not supposed to go on Shabbos, right? And in the Beis Hamikdash, they're lighting the Shabbos they're lighting the candle on Shabbos. Yeah. So I understood that this could only happen in a place of worship.
How is that possible? Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. But the rules change in place of worship.
You want to explain spiritually how that is?
So could we light them here Saturday?
No. We're not in the temple. We don't have that kind of level of spirituality. So this actually supports what I'm trying to say here, right? And by the way, all that happened by the first set of tablets, because the first set of tablets was above to below, right? Because the Jews were pure, there was no sin yet. The second set of tablets didn't have all that fanfare, because it was from below to above. We had to work through it to get there. It was teshuvah, right? It was the Hanukkah model, the below to above. After we sinned, we did teshuvah. We got it on Yom Kippur, where the Jew worked his way through his inner beast and arrived at the Torah, as opposed to God just opened up heavens and wow, the Torah arrived. So, which explains why in the temple they're allowed to violate, so to speak, Shabbos, but the Shabbos rules don't apply. The reason is very simple. Why, spiritually speaking, why is work forbidden for us on Shabbos? The reason work is forbidden to us on Shabbos is because work symbolizes engaging the physical world and transforming it and making it holy. On Shabbos, the world is holy already, right? So you have to disengage from the world. You're not supposed to transform the world on Shabbos. You're supposed to live in a world of godliness, right? So the reason why we stop working is because ordinarily our work implies engagement with negativity. And on Shabbos, we stop engaging in negativity. In the temple, there is no negativity. So the work they do in the temple isn't an engagement in negativity. The work they're doing in the temple is Shabbos. It's just expressing holiness. Following? So all to say that the menorah in the temple symbolizes above to below. God reveals himself as light. It's daytime. It's indoors. Even though the light spreads outside, that's true. But the light that spreads outside doesn't work with the outside. It ignores the outside. It overpowers the outside with its greatness. Whereas the light of the menorah is in the dark, a dark area, the Jews struggling with all of his negativity and all of his garbage and everything. And there he lights a candle in the darkness, from the darkness. Right? There's a very big difference between ignoring the issues I have versus fighting through the issues I have. It's different. It's different between davening versus a farbrengen. Sometimes when you sit in a farbrengen, especially a good farbrengen in the sukkah, you're transported. All your struggles don't exist. All the things you fight over internally don't exist because you're living in a different world. You're living in a world of holiness. You're living in the temple. It's just godliness. It's just beautiful, right? But then the farbrengen's over. It comes the next day, and back to your inner struggles, right? And that's where davening is. You got to work through those problems. You got to think about where are my struggles, what are the things I'm dealing with, how do I make them better, how do I work it? That's the menorah. It's outside, it's at night, and you got to really fight to get that light, to light the candle. As opposed to the menorah, it's beautiful, it's great, it's wonderful, and the light's just shining. And there's a difference between 7 versus 8. 7, as we all know, the 7 days of the week, symbolizes nature. The famous Kli Yakar, think it's Kli Yakar, in his commentary in the opening of Parsha Shmini, discusses the difference between 7 verses 8. 7 represents the natural order. It's a perfect world. Everything is fantastic. Everything's wonderful. Shabbos is the seventh day, right? Because it's the perfection of the world. The number 8 symbolizes infinity. And infinity is expressed even when things are not great and you still find light. Now we know we're talking about infinity. When things are perfect and it's light, okay, things are perfect and it's light. Fantastic. It's just the way it's supposed to be. When things go wrong, it's dark outside, it's nighttime, and there you find the light. Now you're tapping into something greater than just the normal. I don't mean normal in the regular sense. I mean normal as in normal spirituality. Normal, healthy spirituality that comes from God is wonderful. It's great. It's 7 days. It's perfect. It never changes. When a Jew faces the darkness and he faces his own beast and he's got to fight and light that candle, then he reaches infinity. It's the Mashiach element, right? The Mashiach element is the eighth note, right? Right. Is the harp has 7 notes. When Mashiach comes as the 8th note, symbolizing infinity, because Mashiach is achieved by the Jew fighting from below to above, not from above to below. Which is why Hanukkah is uniquely linked to Mashiach. Famous, it's in the name of the Melech, discussing the Zohar. It describes like this: the 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 each equals 36. 36 candles. Those 36 candles, he says, are emblematic of the 36 hours that Adam lived before he was kicked out of the Garden of Eden. Don't remember the exact number or how he got to 36, right? Because there's Shabbos. He was still in the Garden of Eden. Shabbos, he was, right? And then there's a time he lived before Shabbos.
He didn't live 36 hours.
Sorry?
He didn't live 36 hours.
He lived hundreds of years.
No, but before Shabbos.
No, but including Shabbos plus the hours before Shabbos is a total of 36 hours. I'm not mistaken, right? 24 hours of Shabbos. Sorry?
Wasn't he born just before
He's
Shabbos?
created a bit before Shabbos, right? There was some time before Shabbos. No, it's 24 hours of Shabbos. Plus how many more hours do you need to get 36? It's 12 hours. Plus, 12 hours, right? So that's Friday morning. Right? No, he's created Friday afternoon. So how do we get to 36? No. How do we get to 36? No, how do we get to 36? I have to look it up. It's 36 hours that there was. I'm pretty sure it's 36 hours. He's created just before Shabbos, right? No, not just before Shabbos, a little bit earlier, because he had time to sin. He had to have time for Chava to be created. Right?
It's a day and a half, 36, right?
It's a day and a half.
So you're going to be born on Shabbos and violate it.
Right, I'm going to look this up.
Within on Shabbos.
It's called the Oyer HaGonos, the hidden light. There was light available for 36 hours, and then it was concealed. And the Zohar tells us it's concealed till Mashiach comes. And the Noam Melamelech tells us that the 36 candles we light on Hanukkah are emblematic of the 36 hours of light that are hidden for Mashiach to come, because the light of the candles, the light of the menorah is a foretaste of the candles of Mashiach, the light of Mashiach, which is connected to this number 36. How do we get to 36 hours? Okay, and we have to look it up. And I'll get back to you tomorrow. Hold on a second.
Well, you said it was 1
wait.
plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6.
Yeah. One second. Oh, I'm finding it right here. Hold on a second.
6 days.
Yeah, it's 36 hours. A minute. Say it again. What did you say?
We were saying it's 1 plus 2 plus 3 factorial all the way to 6. That represents
To 8.
every day but the 7th day.
No, it's 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8.
Oh, plus 8.
All the candles you light over Hanukkah.
All right. Okay.
Hold on a second. So here we go. That's right. Okay, so I'm reading it correctly. It was here for 36 hours. That's right. This hidden light was it's in the Medrash. Was here for 36 hours for the whole Shabbos plus 12 hours of Friday, because Adam was born. So until Adam was kicked out of the Garden of Eden, the light was there. So maybe Adam was created later, but it started shining already in the morning. Yeah, as the Medrash tells us. Yeah. And that corresponds to 36 candles we light over Hanukkah. Okay. So there we have the Hanukkah candles compared to the menorah in the temple. The menorah in the temple symbolizing, representing light from above to below. Hashem, divine light is expressed in a beautiful, unopposed fashion, in which the light comes from a place of holiness, and there it shines the darkness. That's true, unadulterated, but also unopposed, right? Because it just completely overpowers any negativity that exists. It doesn't engage in the negativity. It's just here's goodness and ignore everything else, right? But then there is the light of the menorah, which is lit outside in the dark, where Jew is struggling and he fights and pushes to light that one little candle, and that reaches number 8, that reaches the infinity. That's the Mashiach element. So now let's compare the candles of Hanukkah to the candles of Shabbos, and we'll have one more element to this whole experience. So here's the major difference between the Shabbos candles and the Hanukkah candles. The Shabbos candles, the primary objective is to produce light, meaning it's the result that your home is lit. What's the primary element of Shabbos candles? The basic halachic necessity for Shabbos candles is that a person has to enjoy his meal on Friday night. Back in the old day, if you don't have light, if you don't light candles before Shabbos, your house is going to be dark over Shabbos, and you'll trip on things and you'll bang things. You won't be able to see your meal. You won't be able to enjoy Shabbos if the house is dark. So the sages instituted light candles before Shabbos, so that way you have candles on Shabbos. So if you light the candles before Shabbos and the candles go out, you didn't do any mitzvah. Because the whole point is that there should be light on the table. In fact, in theory, you can fulfill the obligation with the electric candles. If you're in a hospital, God forbid, or if someone's giving birth and you're in a hospital and you can't light candles because they don't let you, use electric candles. You have a plug-in candle with a little switch. They give them to you here in the Montreal Jewish General. You make a bracha and you turn on the candle, and that's it.
You said, then you didn't fulfill the mitzvah.
That's right, because the point is not the lighting, the point is the result. And the result didn't happen because you have no light.
How long between lighting and going out is it not constituted?
For the meal. The main is to have it for the meal. The main is to have light for the meal. It's the primary objective, which is why when you light Shabbos candles, it should be lit by the place where you eat, not some other room. So today there's a big shaila how we even make a bracha on our candles, because we have so much electric light. We don't rely on the Shabbos candles for light anymore. So how do you make a bracha? So the end is we do make a bracha because it adds to the experience of Shabbos. It adds to the experience of the ambiance of the meal when you have candles. What's the proof? You go to a fancy hotel, they put candles on your table. You go to a fancy dinner, they put candle lit on your table. Why? Because it adds to the ambiance. Okay, so it adds to the ambiance of your Shabbos meal. We're talking about halach, not the spiritual message. Spiritually speaking, there's all kinds of messages. But on the halachic level, this is the reason, to enhance the physical experience of the meal. Point being is, it's not about the act, it's about the result. Not about the act of lighting, it's about the resulting light. It's the primary objective of the Shabbos candles. It's even a big question. When you light Shabbos candles, you're not eating at home. So what do you light Shabbos candles for? By the time you get home, the candles are burnt out already. And even if it is burnt out, you're not eating there. So why are you making a bracha on these candles? It's a big shiloh. Some Rabbanim actually say that when you should make sure you have long-lasting candles. When you come home, eat something at the candles. At least you enjoy the candle something. Or another option is if you turn the light switches off in that room, you turn it back on, you light your Shabbos candles, make a bracha, and you have in mind also the light switch. And if you have in mind also the light switch, then that light is producing candles, producing light, which you will enjoy over Shabbos, and then at least the bracha was going on that too. I'm not saying you necessarily have to do that. You can ask me specific situations. I'll tell you what to do. But I'm just making the point that the lighting of the Shabbos candles is not about the act, but it's about the resulting light. When it comes to the menorah, even though it's true that we just finished explaining when we compared the menorah when we compared the Hanukkah to the menorah in the temple, that it's all about transforming the darkness, but it's actually about the act. Halacha is, if you light the Shabbat, you light the menorah, there has to be enough oil or wax to be able to last for half an hour into the night. But if the candle goes out, you don't have to relight it. which is why on Shabbos,
What was that, 30 minutes?
30 minutes into dark, has the light last for 30 minutes after dark, which is why on Shabbos you have to have longer candles because you light it a bit earlier, right?
Yeah.
So that
yeah.
have to be
I think they said today 50 minutes.
yeah, it has to be lasting longer, so it can last into the night. So if, however, God forbid, the candles go out, so you do relight them, but on Shabbos when you can't relight them, did you lose the mitzvah of Hanukkah candles? No, you did not, because when you lit them, they were able to last for as long as they're supposed to, and even though later it went out, not my problem. I fulfilled the mitzvah, because when it comes to the menorah, the mitzvah is not the resulting light, but the act of lighting. In fact, we say in Haneres Halalu, right, in the prayer right after we light the menorah, what we say, Haneres Halalu ein lo nerishtos l'shtamish behem. We have no right to use these candles. We're not allowed to use the light of the candles. It's one of the two reasons for the shamash. There's two reasons for the shamash light. One is to light the other candles, and the other one is to have a candle burning that's not part of your Hanukkah menorah, so that just in case you end up using light in the room, we can say, oh, I'm not using the Hanukkah candles, I'm using the shamash light. Now, today we have electric lights, so that's not a problem. But in the old day, right? In the old day, it's very possible you might end up using the menorah candles. So you have an extra candle there to say, no, I'm not using the menorah candles, I'm using this one. Right? In fact, sorry? Yes, right. That's correct. We learned. Yes, that's right. We learned a lot. We learned the Gemara on Hanukkah. We discussed a lot of this. That's right. Right. So, in fact, there's some people who switched it, who have two different candles for the two different objectives. The Chabad custom is that the same candle we use to light the Hanukkah menorah, that becomes the candle that's the shamash. So, candle for shamash and oil for the menorah, like a beeswax candle for the shamash, and the menorah itself is oil. Others actually just have an oil shamash. They take a candle, light the shamash, make a bracha, light the other menorah candles tonight 2, tomorrow at 3, whatever, and then put out the candle, and then their shamash is that oil one. In other words, they have two different candles for two different objectives of the shamash. One candle to light the menorah, and another one just to be there lit, so that just in case you're using the light of the menorah, you're not using the light of the menorah, you're using the light of the shamash. Well, all to say that the mitzvah of the menorah is not the resulting light, but the act of lighting. As opposed to Shabbos, candles, where the mitzvah is the resulting light and not the act. The main thing is the resulting light. So how does this contribute to our discussion here? When we talk about the menorah, we talk about the Hanukkah candles as the person who's fighting in a place of darkness. He's fighting with his beast. He's trying to find a little light. What's the primary objective here? Not your success rate, but you're working at it. It's the act of working, not the success rate, how much light you produce. That's not the question. The question is, how much fight did you put in to light those candles? It's the act, not the result. This follows is what the Alter Rebbe tells us about the difference between the tzaddik versus the beinoni. Right? The tzaddik, says the Alter Rebbe, is not the expectation. We're not supposed to become tzaddik. We are supposed to be a beinoni. What's the big difference between the tzaddik and the beinoni in Tanya? Both of them are doing all the mitzvahs. Both of them are never violating code of Jewish law, which is a huge, tall order. So if they're both behaving the same, what's the difference between the beinoni and the tzaddik? You look at them on the outside, they might look the exact same. What's the difference? The difference is what's going on inside. The tzaddik transformed his animal soul, just godly soul. He's like a temple, the light's shining through him. Finished. The beinoni, on the other hand, has got to put up a fight every day. Every day he's got to put up a fight. And just because he conquered his animal soul now, it doesn't mean in 5 minutes from now, he will again. It's quite possible in 5 minutes from now, he may not be as successful. And it could be 5 minutes ago, he wasn't so successful. Because every act is self-standing. He has to fight every time. And he fights again and again and again and again. There's a famous chassid who was an actual beinoni of Tanya. His name was Rabbi Nissen Nemenov. He's a mashpia, mentor, became a mentor at a very young age. A mentor meaning people that were like 30, 40, 50 years older than him would sit down and listen to him talk. He was in his 20s, they were in his 50s, they were in their 40s, 50s, and they would sit and listen to him lead the Fabrengen. He was a man the previous ever appointed him to be this kind of leader at a very young age. He's first in Russia and then later in Paris. So he was once asked, how do you become a beinoni? How do you do this? So he said, if I asked you to control yourself for the next 5 minutes, can you do it? He said, 5 minutes I can do it. So he said, okay. So when 5 minutes are up, ask yourself again, can you do it for 5 minutes? And then do it again for 5 minutes. And then when 5 minutes are up, ask yourself again, can you do it for 5 minutes? And do it again. But imagine being like that. Every few minutes, you have to remind yourself, I got to control myself. I got to control myself. I got to control myself. There's no guarantee that in a week from now I'll be able to do it. Right? So when it comes to the Shabbos candles, the whole point is the result. You lit the candles, you have light, the light's there until it burns out. With the menorah, there's no guarantee that you're going to have light. But you put up a fight. You put up a fight to light that candle, you're in. You fulfilled your mitzvah. Because it all comes back to the same point that the Hanukkah candle represents the struggle in the place of negativity. And for the Jew who's struggling in a place of negativity, the resulting light, it's God's business. My job is to put up a fight and light that candle. It goes out 5 minutes from now, I'll light it again. And it goes out 5 minutes after, I'll light it again. Because my work is not in the result. A Beinoni may never get to the result where he's going to relax and say, oh, I can finally relax and serve God. No. Fight and push and fight. And tomorrow's fight not going to be the same as yesterday's fight. Yesterday's fight was 1 candle. Tomorrow's fight's 2 candles. The day after is 3 candles. There's a new fight every time. But he's in it. And he's doing the act of lighting, even if sometimes the results aren't as good as and as beautiful as a Tzaddik's Shabbos candlelight perfect result. And that's the Mashiach experience, is the fight for Hashem, the process, not the result, not the perfect guy at the end. That's the Tzaddik's business, to be the perfect guy at the end. Our job is not to be the perfect guy. Our job is to be in the fight day in, day out. That's our job. The Hanukkah candles in the place of darkness. And that's a true infinity. That's the true number 8. This is the uniqueness of the Hanukkah candles above the Shabbos candles and above the menorah in the temple. Of course, if we were celebrating the temple now, I'll tell you how the temple candles are the best. And if we're celebrating Shabbos now, I'll tell you how the Shabbos candles are the highest. But since we're celebrating Hanukkah, we have to highlight the uniqueness of the Hanukkah candles and the message it teaches us. Stay in the fight. The act of lighting, that's where we're at. The result, Hashem's business. Hashem will worry about whether we're successful or not successful. But we stay in the fight. We stay in the fight. And every day, push.
And if you light a candle on Shabbos and it's supposed to last an hour or 2 hours,
Yeah.
and it doesn't, it's not your fault. You did your job.
It's not your fault, but the mitzvah technically was missing. Yeah, no one's going to hold you accountable, but the point is the mitzvah wasn't done really. When it comes to
all intentions, the candle should have been.
right. What I mean is that the mitzvah wasn't done. The mitzvah was undone. When it comes to Hanukkah candles, if the candle went out, the mitzvah wasn't undone. The mitzvah was fulfilled in its entirety. When it comes to the Shabbos candles, the mitzvah wasn't done. It was not your fault, but it was still undone. Right? Okay, wonderful day and a Feilach Hanukkah. Yeah.
There's another difference though. You can fulfill the mitzvah with electric lights, you said, for Shabbos.
Yeah.
Earlier,
With Hanukkah candles, you cannot use electric lights. Yeah.
Electric lights.
Not for Hanukkah. Because of this reason. Because when it comes to the Shabbos candles, the main objective is the resulting light. So do electric light. What's the difference? When it comes to Hanukkah candles, the objective is not resulting light, but you lighting a candle. So you flicking on a switch is not lighting a candle. But that doesn't constitute lighting a candle. The halacha is, the mitzvah is light a candle, not produce light. You haven't lit a candle when you light an electric light. It's like saying, taking instead of tefillin, I'm going to take this book and put it on my arm.
It doesn't say for Shabbos light a candle.
No,
produce light.
That's right. When it comes to Shabbos, it's produce light. So it doesn't matter how you produce the light. That's right. There's no verse. It's a rabbinic commandment. But the rabbinic commandment is to produce light for Shabbos. So produce light however you want. With electric light, what's the difference? Yeah. When it comes to Hanukkah candles, the mitzvah is light a candle. That's right. It's lighting an electric light is like taking this book and putting it in my arm for tefillin. It's not the mitzvah.
But yet there seems to be quite a lot of emphasis on Hanukkah to display it outdoors and
that's right.
Most of the people who do that, from what I see, is by electric.
It does. Whenever I see electric candles in windows, I'm like hoping and praying that on the kitchen table they have menorah light. I hope so. Can I say?
No, I think
people do.
For their own mitzvah, they do the candle outside. It's all
the displays of lights on the outside. Yeah, the displays on the outside is it's not a bad thing, but it's probably the result of American consumerism more than it is but I'm all for it. That my children have it in my house, and I think it's beautiful to demonstrate to everybody that you're Jewish, you're proud, and we do exactly have one outside here just to demonstrate that we're Jewish and to demonstrate we're celebrating Hanukkah, to remind people it's Hanukkah. It's a beautiful thing, but it doesn't do with the mitzvah of fulfilling nothing to do with
Because there's the mitzvah of publicizing the miracle, right?
the mitzvah of publicizing the miracle is lighting the menorah candles, not the electric lights.
Seems to be a lot of emphasis on that.
It's a celebrity.
So
No,
it's
Yeah, at the public menorah lighting, we did it in the corner of Queen Mary and Fleet. But the bracha is not made on the electric light
No, right, you're right.
because you can't fulfill a mitzvah without electric light. It's not. It's a nice thing. It's a decorative thing. Okay. Have a wonderful day. Have a happy and voluminous Hanukkah.
I missed the part where you're mentioning some people, they have the shamash as an oil.
Yeah.
So what do they do?
They take the candle,
take
light-
one candle,
they take a
one
candle, light the shamish, which is like an oil thing,
Yeah.
set distinctive from the rest of the menorah.
Yeah.
Then they make the bracha, take that same candle, light their menorah, and they put out that candle. And they were left with an oil shamish here, and there are candles up at the menorah.
Okay.
Right? So instead of using the actual shamish to light the candles, they use different. So they're separating between the two functions of the shamish. They have one candle to light their candles, another one that just stays there to be a light, so that to deflect from your using the menorah light,
Right, which is the primary function, right?
which is the primary function of the shamish. That's correct.
Okay.
They just the Chabad custom used to use one candle for both, but
Right.
it's just
Then
yeah.
you have oil and then you have this one candle.
Yeah, so that's right. And a
That's
Chabad
what they did
menorah,
in the past, now they should have an oil shamash.
yeah. So the Chabad custom is to have a beeswax candle for the menorah, for the shamish, and then oil for everything else, and not to have that oil shamish. But it's perfectly fine. Yeah, certainly. That's right. I think actually what you do, what I just described is actually more common than the Chabad version. That's my knowledge.
It's just more dangerous, I think, to
Have a beeswax.
have the oil, the shamash, because we have to tip it so much. So like
Right, so I'm saying you don't use that one to light the other ones. You just light the shamash, let it sit there, and then use another candle to light your actual menorah, and then put that original candle out, and you have a shamash burning with oil. You never moved it, right? You split the functions of the shamash. You use one candle to light the menorah, and another one to sit there to deflect from using the main light, but which is what many people do.
I think many people don't know that rule. That's why they use
The actual,
candle as a shamash.
oh, that could be
They
dangerous.
think you need to use that to light.
No, the Chabad custom is to have
No,
that
but-
candle for
right,
both.
So that works well.
That's right.
in Chabad.
Yeah,
that candle would be anything,
yeah, in theory,
even a party candle.
in theory.
I'm sure
I'm telling you, the Chabad custom, if you want to follow Chabad custom, which of course I encourage you to do, is to have oil for your Hanukkah candles and a beeswax candle for your shamash, and the same one you use, the same beeswax you use to light the two oil candles. That is your shamash, which stays there, and that's it.
It's more beeswax, it's more pure than that.
It yeah, the beeswax makes a cleaner and shinier, yeah, nicer light,
First choice is oil,
and then beeswax, yeah.
beeswax, and what's the third one?
You want it's one that doesn't produce smell and one that produces a clean light and not like a flickering flame.
What's the third one?
Yeah, my God.
You show them or-
I know.
That's just, you read it together.
Don't use pitch or tar, whatever.
Yeah, it smells.
It mentions it. You
Okay,
learn
yeah, we looked at the last, it was last year, 2 years ago.
this-
Okay.
Have a wonderful day and a happy and luminous Hanukkah.
What's this question?